Melinda Greenway opened her eyes. The painful memory lodged in the front of her mind. Every day since that awful night, she woke with the recollection of her parents' and brother's deaths, still wondering how she had managed to endure in the ruins of their home while her family hadn't. She reminded herself, as she had to every day, that the war was over. She was lucky. She'd survived when so many hadn't, and despite everything, she did at least now have a new roof over her head. Even so, the guilt of surviving was never far away. She ran a trembling hand over her forehead, as though feeling the pain of the concussion and the trauma of the event as keenly as the day it happened. So much had transpired in the years since, and her world had changed, sometimes for the better, sometimes for the worst. But any change created insecurity, and Mel was feeling fragile that morning and very much alone. She evoked the second lieutenant's deep blue eyes again, alive as they were with sympathy, as though he knew the pain she had felt. Mel had never felt connected to anyone like that before. Not that it had mattered much in the end. She pushed the memory of Derrin Bradley firmly to the back of her mind, a desperate attempt at taking back full control of her thoughts and her emotions, locking them away, along with Derrin's image. She hadn't seen him since he left London with no warning, not even a letter to explain that he'd been sent somewhere else. For all she knew, he had died on the front, or worse, was badly maimed. The thought brought a shudder to her, knowing that for some men, this would be a fate worse than death. And Derrin, so young and vital, so full of energy and life, would not fare well in such a situation. To distract herself, Mel looked around the room for the first time in the daylight. Yes, it was small, but no more so than the room she'd occupied in the female quarters at the army barracks for the past 4 years. At least here she could personalise, if they let her stay, and that was a big if at this point. She'd arrived at Avonby Hall just the night before, after weeks of letter exchanges with her second cousin, Lord Jonathan Greenway. The housekeeper had shown her to a room, telling her that Lord Jonathan and Lady Laura had already retired. Now, she realised, she had been housed in a former seamstress's room. There was still a dressmaker's dummy, a box of fabric pieces, cotton reels, and a Singer sewing machine in the corner, as though they'd been abandoned just days and not years ago. It was a strange homecoming, somewhat bittersweet. During the war, the previous lord, Anthony Greenway, had died in a plane crash with his wife and children, leaving Mel's father as the next in line, a title that would eventually have been passed on to her brother, Valentine. They hadn't even been told of Anthony's death when tragedy struck, and Mel's entire family were wiped out, leaving her with the new title of lady, but not the rights of ownership because of the codicils attached to their family legacy. Jonathan, as next male in line, had moved into the Avonby estate along with his new wife, Laura, taking the family title and inheritance. All the while, Mel was oblivious of the change in circumstances, because on leaving the hospital, she had enlisted. She'd visited her former home only once, to rescue a few treasured items, but never since. But even had she received the notification about the change of lineage, it would have meant nothing. There was no room for meaningless titles in the war, and Mel doubted she'd use hers even now.